Kevin Rudd, thank you for your time. There have been concerns for a very long time now about the tensions between Taiwan and China. In your view, why has this talk about the drums of war suddenly bubbled up now?
Well, tensions between China and Taiwan go back a long time. They've certainly intensified in the last several years, but there's nothing to underpin an analysis which says that there is any crisis imminent. That's why, frankly, I've been puzzled by the drums of war language, or Dutton's language as Minister for Defence, refusing to rule out the possibility of war with China over the Taiwan Straits. So what's my argument? My interpretation is that this is primarily about a piece of domestic political repositioning by the government, simply to change the domestic political narrative and agenda from areas where the government's in trouble, on vaccines, on climate change, and if you like, on sexual abuse scandals in Canberra, to what they would regard as much safer political terrain, namely the khaki terrain of a national security agenda. I think it's primarily about politics.
You say there are no signs at the moment of any kind of war. Do you think that in this COVID and soon-to-be post-COVID era that the chance of a regional war sparked by Taiwan is any greater than it was before?
Not particularly, and the reason I say that is that Xi Jinping is marching to the beat of his own drum on this and China's own national agenda. Certainly the analysis of my think tank in the United States on this question points to real probabilities and possibilities of China beginning to take direct assertive action towards the end of the 2020s, but not now. And therefore, again, I go back to the wisdom and, frankly, the lack of wisdom of people like Dutton as Defence Minister or any Australian Cabinet Minister publicly speculating on the possibilities of war at this stage. It just throws fuel on the fire unnecessarily. We've got enough problems to deal with China already without throwing this one on the top.
I'll come to those problems in a second, but I wanted to ask, first of all, the federal government was today once again talking about expanded defence activities in the Northern Territory. This was also going on under the previous Labor government as well. Why does Australia need enhanced defence capability in the Northern Territory?
Well, during our period in office, of course, we negotiated with the Obama administration the positioning of US forces in Darwin, the additional Marine forces, together with the pre-positioning of certain equipment for the United States Armed Forces. We saw that as necessary as part of the US overall strategy of pivoting to the region. And certainly in terms of our northern defence bases, I have no argument at all about the strengthening of those facilities and the enhancement of those facilities. But remember, Lee, this stands in stark contrast if the rationale for this is China, with a government which decided that it was smart to authorise a 99-year lease for the port of Darwin to the Chinese, for God's sake. It stands in complete contrast to what the government is now talking about and doing.
On another matter, the Prime Minister's religion has been in the news this week. You're a Christian as well. When you were Prime Minister, did you have a sense that it was God's will that you were in that position?
Absolutely not. The idea that anyone leading a political party could believe that it is, God on our side is just the stuff of real danger, in my view. We are a proudly secular country where people who are agnostics, atheists, Christians, colourthumpians can compete for office in our secular national parliament. That's as it should be. And in fact, I think Mr Morrison and myself have radically different views on the role of Christianity in Australian politics, and I've been quite disturbed by the transcript of his recent speech delivered to a Pentecostal gathering on the Gold Coast in the last several days.
It's been pointed out by commentators that you regularly did doorstops outside the church that you attended.
Well, that's absolutely right. I made no apology for the fact that Therese, myself and our family, people of faith. Guess what? The media were never invited to those churches by me or my staff. They simply knew that church ended at a particular hour and began at a particular hour, so they would simply come along and throw questions at you as you left church and went to your car. That's exactly what happened. In fact, one day, Lee, we discovered a journalist sitting in the pew behind us in St John's in Canberra just to get a story. So we were not in the business of having cameras anywhere near our private religious practices.
On the question of God's will, it is pretty standard belief for a devout Christian to believe that God is directing their lives and is personally interested in their lives. So is it really that controversial that the Prime Minister, a devout Christian, would believe that it's God's will and that he's doing God's work in the role that he's in?
Well, I think there's 2 or 3 problems with it. You see, Mr Morrison has never expounded in detail in writing the exact impact of his particular Christian belief on his political practice. Like me or loathe me, what I did prior to becoming Prime Minister was write a long essay in the monthly magazine called Faith in Politics, which basically lays it out in black and white as to my interpretation of what a Christian belief means in terms of political practice, which is about, frankly, the theology of social justice and the theology of environmental custodianship. Now, Mr Morrison has a radically different view of his Christianity, and he should put that in black and white. But when I see him say that it's somehow God's intervention to appear to him through the image of a portrait of an eagle, as if this is a reference to the prophetic writings of the prophet Isaiah in the Old Testament, I think that starts to get really wacky, frankly. And on top of that, to believe that you have some divine mandate as a Prime Minister to lay your hands on somebody without their concurrence or knowledge and pray for them when you're meeting and greeting or comforting them as Prime Minister, that's way in excess of your mandate as the secular Prime Minister of this country. And on those things, I fundamentally disagree with Mr Morrison. And I think most mainstream Christians in Australia would disagree with him as well.
Kevin Rudd, thank you.
Good to be with you.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.